You know, the Bible is a book. It's one book. It's got 66 books in there, but it's one book. And the Bible story builds its story from Genesis to Revelation. It's the same story because it's about the same God.
Yes, it is.
And we need to understand when anytime you study the Bible, I think most of the people here do, but when you come to the Bible study, you never know who's here. So we say this anyway, and who's going to pick up the tape. But when we read in the Bible, we have to understand that the God of Genesis is the God of Revelation,
Yes,
and God all the way through, and he hadn't changed.
it's the same.
And he's operating on one system, and it's his own word
Yes, sir, he is.
from the very beginning. And so often, we run into error when we start taking this thing as a separate kind of story, and we set everything apart instead of putting it together in a whole. And but there was a no show. Some of y'all don't remember. It's been gone that long. Years ago on television, it was called Dragnet. Anybody remember Dragnet? And the guy on the Dragnet, he'd be investigating a crime or something, and they'd be trying to tell him something. And he'd say, "Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts." That was his word. Jack Webb, just the facts, ma'am. But he's Joe Friday. He's a cop. He just wants the facts. But when we look at the Bible and get God's facts, that's where we need to begin to build our faith on God's facts, not on popular opinion or what somebody has said. And so many Christians will argue what they've heard, and it's not got Bible backing, and that's what leaves a lot of people out there in the world saying, well, they don't, they don't care about the truth. And see, when I was young and coming up, I've heard Christians say, talk about dinosaurs, and they'd say, there ain't no such thing as dinosaurs, never has been a dinosaur. But you could go to Smithsonian and there's bones. So, I mean, it doesn't, God is all about truth.
Yes, he is.
He's all about truth. But see, those a lot of the Christian arguments is not about what the Bible said, but about what they've heard.
Yes.
See? And, I've talked to folks and they get all upset if you said the earth was more than 6,000 years old. Truth is, we don't know how old the earth is, and the Bible doesn't tell us. We know that from the time of Adam, we're working on a 6,000-year pattern. But we don't know about the world that started, and the Bible doesn't give us the time. Genesis, the first chapter, says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. That doesn't give us a time, does it? Just to start with, he did. So we can't argue 6,000 years on this. And then it said, and the earth was without form and void. And a lot of people will say, well, God, he just kind of flung it out there and then went back and fashioned it. God had never done anything without form and void.
No.
His works is perfect. The Bible declares that. And, Isaiah 45:18 tells us that he didn't create the earth void. And the Hebrew word there that's translated was, and we've talked about it around here a lot, is the word became. He created this thing and it became. Well, if he created it good and it became, we have to understand that something happened to cause it to become void and without form. And what we're doing here is we want to show you that how God operates. And he operates all the time in the same way. If God created this thing perfect, and the Bible does declare that all his works are perfect, and it became void and without form, and if you'll run that back in the Hebrew, it means a wilderness, a massive confusion. If it became that way, then something caused it to become that way. And when we understand what brought it to its devastation, then we'll understand what brings devastation every time. And so, we need to get in the Bible, and we've talked around here. We understand it was Satan's fall, and that there was a pre-Adam creation here, and Satan was not evil until Satan fell. And we're not going to go into all of that, but his rebellion caused the earth to become void and without form, because Satan was put here a seed sower, because the Bible calls him an anointed cherub. Anything that God anoints, folks, becomes a seed sower. If the anointing of God is on you, what you do in this life matters. It causes things to happen. And so when Satan was put here, he was put here perfect in all his ways. But the Bible said that iniquity was found in him. So he was a seed sower, and he began to sow rebellion, and the earth became void and without form. And what we get after that, Genesis 1 and 2, is that God began to reform this thing, and he reformed it again. Every time that you see what he did, you'll say, and God saw that it was good, because that's all God does. That's all he does is good. Now, that broke down, and God reformed it. And if you look over in Genesis 6, you'll see another breakdown. We was just talking about the movie. Well, here's the book. The movie Noah, here's the book. Said, and it came to pass, we started 1, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days should be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And we understand, if we go ahead and read, we're not going to read that whole thing, but what was happening here, again, caused the world, the earth, and everything in it to be destroyed. Devastation fell, folks, because every imagination of man's heart became evil continually. Now, if we look at that, and again, this is another one of those things, people will teach some high scholars, because through the ages, even Josephus, lays out this story, that the fallen angels came and began to, go in under the women and bear children, half angel, half human, where the giants came from. Folks, it's not so, and you can't prove that nowhere in the Bible. Number one, the angel is a spirit.
There's no blood to procreate.
Jude said that those that fell with Satan was in chains of darkness waiting for the judgment. But see, and there's so many things that you have to look at with that. And you can't just settle because everybody says, oh, it was the angels. Because that is error. And if you start out with error, folks, you're going to have some more error somewhere along this book to back that error up, or it won't hold. And do you understand that there's nowhere in the Bible where God ever told women not to marry angels? Not one word. Anywhere did he ever tell humankind not to mix with angels. He didn't have to, because angels cannot mix with humans. See, he didn't. They're spirit. We were flesh. Now they can take a body that looks flesh, but even those bodies, folks, walked through doors and did all these things, but they look like humans. But folks, they cannot procreate, and you won't find that anywhere in the Bible. And in the Hebrew, see this word, giants was translated in the King James out of the Greek Septuagint, out of the Greek translation. And so King James translated it giants. But the Hebrew word is Nephilim, which comes from a word called Nephal, which means fallen or cast out. See? And so they took that word. Now, it can mean giants, it can mean bully, but you have to see what they're saying. They took that word and translated it giants. Job 3:16 translated the same word, abortions. Now, Jesus said it was as it was in the days of Noah. So do you see giants anywhere walking around? You see some big men, but are they giants or are they just big men? They're not half angels. I guarantee you, if you run the DNA, they're all human. But you do see abortions by the tons. They were killing their babies. And the sons of God got caught up in this sexual revolution. And see, if you take it, and we're not going to, we've done it before. We've took this verse and went through it and showed you what it said by when you take out the words in italics, which was put in there to help you try to help you understand it better. But when you take it out and read it, you can see a little different story. But the sons of God got caught up in a sexual revolution. The sons of God got to saying that it was all right. Do you see any of that? We just told you. We just told you about what's happening with the world vision. You've got churches today, folks, that is pro-abortion. Churches. So it was the sons of God, those that had been following God, that got caught up in the things of the world, and they began to go along with that. And the Bible said that these same heathen women that had been aborting their babies began to bear children to the sons of God, and the sons of God here, folks, is the same sons of God you see over in Romans 8. As many as follow after the Spirit of God, they are sons of God. Same sons. I mean, the Bible ain't confusing you saying this one's a son, that one's a son. Different. No, sons are sons. But we get caught up in that. And folks, see, if they were angels, and again, we're just using this, we know that they weren't, but if they were angels, and God drowned humans and left the angels, does that make sense? Now, we see giants, we see Goliath, but there's no evidence anywhere that Goliath's family was mixed with an angel. And they were after the flood. So why would God drown out all humanity, or the harvest system, and leave the perpetrators of this thing walking around to do it again? He wouldn't have. And like I said, Jude said they're chained. Those that fell with Satan are chained. Now, what was going on then caused the flood to come, caused judgment to fall. And it was shedding of the innocent blood. And you see it all through the Bible. The shedding of innocent blood causes judgment. And look, when we read this, we have to understand this. God didn't just create the earth, recreate it, and then 3 weeks from then, he's drowned it, the harvest is drowning it with a flood. This thing took almost 2,000 years. It built, and it built, and it built, until there was no remedy. Judgment fell, because what they were doing was, through the harvest system, was destroying the earth, folks. It wasn't them leaving a carbon footprint. It was destroying it through sin, because sin brings judgment, and it was destroying the earth. And so God, through the harvest system, the Lord sent the flood. Not Elohim, but the harvest part of God sent the flood. And Noah, the Lord was looking for something to save even then, or he wouldn't have told Noah to build a boat. The Bible said Noah found grace, and he told Noah, he was trying to find all those that would repent to come then, but they wouldn't come. And see, we can't look over these things, folks, and say, well, that was way back there. It has no bearing on us. We're serving that God. That same God. We're serving that same God who works by his own word. And here, that verse 3 there, and the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with a man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. We read that, and it just How many times have you ever heard anybody from the pulpit preach that? And if they do, they say, well, God said man wasn't going to live over 120 years. But I can show you after this where a bunch of folks lived over 120 years. So God wasn't saying that man wasn't going to live over 120 years. He's saying that man wasn't going to be here, but 100. See, he told us right then how long we was going to be. Now, you can't misunderstand that. He shall be 120 years. Now, all we need to do is find out what 120 years he's talking about. And then if you go back and you begin to look at the feast of God that he set out, the appointments of God is what the Jews call them. The word in the Bible over in Leviticus 23 is these are appointments. We look at those feasts and we say, oh, yeah, God set up something and told them just go eat right here. We like that. You know, God was saying, y'all go eat. No, he's setting up appointments and he's showing through these feasts things that are coming. Now, there was a feast at the end of these called Jubilee. Now, you know, the first 7 there, 8 means a new beginning. Yes. In the Bible, the word 8 signifies a new beginning. But he had those 7, and Jesus fulfilled the first 4 exactly, leaving 3 in that first 7 to be fulfilled. And they will be fulfilled exactly. God does things exactly. But the Feast of Jubilee was once every 50 years. And if you will count that 50 and multiply it by 120, you'll get the exact years of man's land lease on the earth, which is 6,000 years from here. Now, do we know exactly when it started? No, God does. God does. And he said our days would be that. And so we can look for that. Do we know the day of the hour? No, I don't. But we know it's going to be 120 years. God years, Jubilee years. From the time that God had said that. If God says it, God can't lie. The Bible said it's impossible. And if nobody had ever heard that truth before, as soon as God said it, it's truth. Because you can't change it. But this thing that man was doing in that time brought the flood. Judgment fell. Took almost 2,000 years for the judgment to be able to where it would fall. And I saw a little article here a while back, and they had polled Christians, and 50% of Christians no longer believe that there was ever a flood. 50%. Again, if you lose sight of judgment, then you lose sight of turning back to God because you see no need for it. No. But, and that's another thing I totally do not get. People say I'm Christian, but I don't believe the Bible. No, you're not Christian. I don't know what you are, but you're not Christian. But again, say, people don't believe in the flood not because there is no evidence, but they don't believe in the flood in spite of the evidence. They found fossil fields just full of bones, all kind of bones in just certain places. How'd they get all that in certain places? Because a flood put them there. They found fish skeletons on Pikes Peak. They said, oh, there used to be an ocean here. There sure was. It was a flood.
One big one.
They found fossils of trees, standing up trees, in rocks. How did that happen? How did it fossilize and not rot and fall down? To start with, it happened because there was a flood that washed mud over it, folks, and left it stand. But see, if you start looking at this and saying there was a worldwide judgment, then you got to start thinking, well, maybe there could be a worldwide judgment again. And they don't want to hear that. Because when you start understanding that, you become responsible before God to do something about your own life. And so they don't want to hear that. Now, see, and man needs to get this. Man does not have to believe in the Bible for the Bible to fulfill itself and be true.
Come on, sir. It's going to happen anyway.
I mean,
God said it.
whether you believe it or not, it's, like I posted today. When the rapture occurs, the next day somebody will be making a movie about the earth evolved and got rid of the haters, and the day after that they'll be writing books about global warming caused it all. But, folks, what God said will happen. You ain't got to believe it. Whether you believe it or not, but it's going to happen. But what you believe will put you on different sides. See,
Come on.
so it will help us out if we look at the truth and get on the right side before judgment falls, because it certainly is going to fall. Now let's look over just a little bit. Gotta hurry, my goodness. Look over in chapter 10 and 11. We'll just, if your Bible's like mine, it's kind of on the same page. In the Genesis, you can look at 11. I'm going to read just a little out of 10. But in my Bible, when you open it up, 10's on one side, 11's on the other. So maybe not that way in your Bible, but we're going to look at 11 just for a minute. But now we see where after the flood and men began to multiply, and God told them to go forth and replenish the earth. Remember that? He told Noah that, and he told Adam and Eve that to replenish the earth. Now we see in 10 where there was a guy named Nimrod, and he went and built a kingdom in verse 10 of Babel, and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Now, what's important is you see where it's at. It's in the land of Shinar. And if you go back and read any kind of history back in these days, you'll find out that all of the pagan religions started with this man called Nimrod. And he went over in the land of Shinar and began to build cities and worship idol gods. But now, if you read this whole story, Noah's sons, he had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Shem was the son that followed after God. So it was his seed that was seeking God's way, and we'll have to remember that. You can just count Shem's seed as the godly line. He stayed with the Lord. The other 2 began to worship all sorts of stuff, and their children did too. How many knows that it is important to live before our children a godly life so they can see and know? But anyway, he built the land there of Babel. Now we see. If you read on down there in the verse 22, it starts talking about the children of Shem. In verse 30 it says this, and their dwelling was from Mesha that goeth in Sephar, a mount of the east. Talking about Shem's children, the godly seed. These are the sons of Shem after their families and after their tongues and their lands and their nation. These are families of the sons of Noah after their generations, in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth out of the flood. And it makes plain that the nations were divided. But Shem is the godly seed. The other 2, they're out there. But you see, now, and we're talking about, and everybody knows the story of Babel. It says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. That Hebrew says the whole land. Now you have to understand that the sons of Shem, we just read that, was dwelling from Mesha and unto Sephar. And it says, and it came to pass as they journeyed. Now who's it talking about journeying? The children of Shem. From the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Now over in Shinar was where we saw where that Nimrod had built Babel. So now we got the children of Shem, the godly seed, coming into the land that was built by Nimrod, a pagan worshiper. And God had told the godly seed to go forth and carry the godly seed across the world. He wanted to spread the godly seed. God doesn't care nothing about spreading the wicked seed. He wants to spread the godly seed. But when the children of Shem came there and found Shinar, the land of Babel, they joined in with them. And they said one to another, "Go to, and let us make brick and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and slime they had for mortar, had everything they needed there. And they said, "Go to, and let us build a city and a tower which top may reach into heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad above the face of the whole earth." Now here we got the godly seed come into a place and everything's going good. And they said, "Let's just stay here. And let's build us a tower that reaches into heaven." In other words, let's find another way to God. Let's just build us a way. That's what they're saying. Let's build us a way. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man built. And the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language." In other words, they're talking the same way now. They all got one idea. And they began to do, and nothing now will restrain from them what they've imagined to do. "Go to, let us go down and confound their language, and they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, or all the land. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Now here we go again. God's folks got down there and began to mingle with the seed of the heathen and talk like the heathen and do like the heathen. And what did the Lord do? He went down to change what they could understand. See, they got in agreement. Nothing's going to restrain them. They're in agreement with the heathen. And so God changed the speech. He didn't change the speech so the evil couldn't. That wasn't his purpose. The evil was still evil. He changed their speech so that the sons of God, Shem's line, wouldn't stay there. They had to move. See, they said, "We're going to make a name for ourselves." That ain't what God told them. No. And so their judgment then was the confusion. How many know, see, that the Lord's not the author of confusion? It was confusion before the language. It was Babel. The confusion was they was rebelling against God and doing things their way. And so the Lord scattered them. Now, if you go, and again, when we look at all these things, and we find it again, in Sodom and Gomorrah, when judgment fell again. I believe that's over in Genesis 19. I want to read just a little bit there. We got to hurry. I don't know where the night has went. But we know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, don't we? And how that Lot was down in Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot was the nephew of Abraham. Abraham was a man under covenant. And the city's about to be destroyed. And the angels went down to get Lot out. And verse 22 says this: "Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou be come thither." Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. And the sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. He completely destroyed two cities. And again, these two cities was not just new cities. This thing had been building again for years. But they came to a tipping point, and when the tipping point was there, he sent angels to get out Lot. And then the judgment fell. Now the same thing, you can look over in Luke 11:49 and let's just read that. Luke 11:49 and 51, and we'll see what Jesus talked about a tipping point, a time when judgment was going to fall. Luke 11. Happened in the flood. It happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. When they come to that time, judgment fell. He's talking to Israel here. 49. Therefore also said the wisdom of God, I will send them prophets and apostles, and some of them they shall slay and persecute. And Israel did, folks, for years, that the blood of all the prophets, which was shed from the foundation of the world, may be required of this generation. From the blood of Abel unto the blood of Zechariah, which perished between the altar and the temple, verily I say unto you, it shall be required of this generation. He said they're fixing to kill Jesus. And Jesus said, when that happens, all of the blood of the people I've sent to you, the judgment will for all of their blood will fall on you. So he said, when you destroy me, when you hang me on that tree, when you kill me, the judgment for all the blood that nation of Israel had shed will fall on this generation. And folks, after they crucified Jesus, if you go back and read the history of that time, the Roman army under Titus, Josephus said that when they came into the city, that people were running over bodies trying to escape, that the bodies was piled all along the roads. And people were literally running over the bodies of their families trying to escape the Romans. They killed them by the thousands. They burned the temple. They salted the Temple Mount. All this time, Israel had killed the prophets, stoned the prophets, jailed the prophets. But then they killed the Son. And judgment fell. And Israel was, for a while there, they was, Jews weren't even allowed in Jerusalem for a while. After this happened, everything that they had was destroyed. Now, it fell at a tipping point. And we see the same thing. Like I say, I'm not going to get anywhere close to finishing. But we see the same thing when we get over in Daniel. We taught up here not long back a message called What's Coming Under the Wall. You remember the story of Belshazzar in Babylon? Now, Babylon had been a heathen nation all of that time. Now, they had a king called Nebuchadnezzar at one time. Because of Daniel there, he changed. He kind of had a little turnaround. But then Belshazzar came along. And it had always been pagan. And the judgment hadn't failed. But one night, Belshazzar went over into the place where they kept all of the things that they had stolen out of the house of God over in Jerusalem. See, Nebuchadnezzar took it when he took Israel captive. But Nebuchadnezzar had respect for them. He put those things up. He wasn't touching them. He understood that they belonged into the temple of God. But Belshazzar threw a drunk party and went over and took the things out of the temple of God and gave them to all his women and men that was having the party to drink wine out of. And the hand began to write on the wall. You remember that. And part of the interpretation that Daniel gave him said that the writing says this: you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. He said, Belshazzar, you just tipped the scale. And the Bible said that same night Belshazzar died. And Babylon fell, folks. The Medes and the Persians came under the mighty wall of Babylon and captured it. All of that time, folks, they had been sowing seeds of destruction and nothing had happened. Right. But suddenly there was a tipping point. And Belshazzar died. And Babylon was taken. Now, and we see it over and over and over, folks. And we've come, like it or not, we're coming to that place again. See? We're coming. And how do I know? Because I can see all the things that brought it before happening again. And a lot of this, see, the flood came because what was happening then was happening all over the world at that time. Everywhere they were. It said, all the thoughts of man's heart was evil continually. Well, do you suppose we're almost there again? See? And when Sodom and Gomorrah, all those years, had went along. And if you'll read over in Ezekiel, when it tells about them, it talks about they reached that place where they was just full of pride, and they was full of profit. You know, they were really doing good, where they didn't need God, and they was full of gross immorality. And so, all of it. And it tipped. We see these things, and see, again, you can't just tune prophecy in to one specific place. Now, it does happen in specific places. Judgments are falling in specific places. It was in these days. I'm pretty sure judgment fell before the flood in specific places. But after a while, it fell worldwide. See? And the Lord said he wouldn't destroy the earth anymore with a flood. And anybody notice there hadn't been another one? There hadn't been another worldwide flood. But if you read Revelation, you will find out that judgment does fall again worldwide. Worldwide. And we're seeing it building. And folks, the kingdoms that is set up, and Daniel speaks about them, Revelation speaks about them, and you hear it on the news all the time, how we're trying to push into the global one world government, and we're trying that. And I saw an article yesterday. Of course, it's been going on for years. You know, it started out as NAFTA. Y'all remember NAFTA? North America Trade Agreement or whatever it was. And now you know, they've shortened it so that they're trying to get the deal through. And the president tried to get it through in 2009, but they didn't have enough votes to pass it. And so, but it's still there. To bring America and Mexico and Canada as nations without borders, which will be one of the heads that you see in the global community, have 10 heads. America and Mexico and Canada will be one of those, and we're trying to put that together tonight. It's been going on since 2008, I believe. Where that they will have a 15, I saw all the rules. I read the article where they had all the rules set up. And they will have a 15-man governing body with one man, the president. There will be no such thing as illegal aliens because all borders will be open. Everybody will participate in everybody else's security. They will have that governing body with one man president who will, and this body will have authority over all three nations' governments. In other words, if the Supreme Court passes something and this governing body decides, no, that ain't good for the whole three nations, it will overrule. They will have power to overrule any of the three's laws, you know, home laws. And that's happening. That's being pushed right now. And it's trying to happen all over the world. They're trying to do this all over the world, get blocks together. Folks, when you see these things happening, we understand and know that when all of these things start coming together, we better understand and know we don't have the time that we once had to get this stuff through and to warn folks that it's coming. And you tell people this and they say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. I mean, you can pull it up and read it. Anywhere you want to pull it up and read it, it's there. But what we refuse to see, folks, it won't stop it if we refuse to see it. It's coming anyway. So, just like in Sodom and Gomorrah, we don't know what time it's going to take, but we know that before all of this can come into fulfillment, there's a church going out. So what we need to be doing is focusing on the church going out.
Come on.
Telling folks what's coming, but don't lose focus on the church going out. Because if you ain't careful, you'll get your eyes on the trouble that all this stuff is starting in the world. And, you know, like I said, judgment is already starting to fall. But don't get so focused on what's happening around you and forget there's a church going out. I must stay anchored.